campus is. More than, I think it's 1,900 students who go to school there. This all focusing there on the campus of the high school, but the middle school that was nearby, other schools nearby were locked down as well in Barrow County. Again, to recap for you, 4 dead, multiple hurt, this according to the GBI, 9 taken to area hospitals, 1 suspect in custody. And again, as you look live, it looks as though officers and parents and many others just trying to make sure they are coordinating everyone to make sure all those students are accounted for. And we do expect to hear from law enforcement there in Barrow County very, very soon. But as we come up on the top of the hour, we do want to remind you, we've got you covered right here on Atlanta News First. Atlanta News First starts now.
Atlanta News First starts now with breaking news.
Our breaking news continues here at 4. I'm Sean Gables along with Blair Miller. We are in Winder, right outside of Appalachia High School, where 4 students have been killed in a school shooting. There is a lot of traffic here, heavy police presence, and parents rushing, park their cars, some of them in the middle of the streets, just to be reunited with their children.
And as we see school buses show up here off in the distance, there are many questions as to what happened in this small, knit, close community here today where this shooting has taken place. We're waiting for a news conference to begin here outside the school here. It's scheduled for 4 o'clock. They ran an update a little earlier, a couple of hours ago, and said they would be giving us an update with more answers to what. There are so many questions in this community about what happened here today. And
there has been such a huge community outpouring that is happening at this hour. We've just learned within the last 15 minutes that there is a huge prayer vigil that has been set here in Winder.
This will be taking place at the Winder United Methodist Church. They've opened up their house of worship for today and into the evening so people in this community have a place to go. There are about 1,900 students who go to school here, and you can imagine this community is only about 20,000, and so when something like this happens, it certainly has quite an impact on not just the school, but the neighborhoods around it and our entire country.
And there are a lot of rumors and a lot of communication that is being spread on social media. A lot of it is not vetted, unconfirmed. We are awaiting that press conference to happen within this hour from law enforcement and also from the school district regarding who the 4 fatalities are. Who are the 9 students that have been injured?
We also hope to get more information on the suspect, who we understand is in custody and is alive. That information coming to us from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation today. But who is that shooter is the question many people have. Is it a student at this school? And what happened in the moments leading up to this to get us to where we are right now?
And the other questions is just the security of the school. We have spoken to many of the eyewitnesses here. We had heard from a 10th grader who told us that the minute the shooting happened inside Appalachia High School, that the doors to her classroom, she was next to where the shooting was happened, immediately locked on their own. The teacher turned off the lights. The students were rushed into the corner of the room and to shield together to avoid any gunfire from hitting them. No one hit them inside that classroom, but she said that when they walked out, when everything was settled, the dust had settled and they were allowed to leave the room, she saw many injuries, a lot of bloodshed on the floor, students with visible injuries, a lot of blood.
And seeing the faces of these 9th, 10th, 11th and 12th graders is just so heartbreaking to see, what they're going through. This is the 4th week of school. This should be a celebration for this community, for these students who are starting the year. But now, this year is marked by what has happened here today. So many questions about what happened. I know you've been in these situations before. I was in Uvalde, I've been at Virginia Tech. And the amount of grief that hangs over these communities, it's so hard to get it across to people at home who may be watching this, because we all hurt when we see these kinds of things happen and when we talk to people about how they've been impacted, especially the students impacted here today.
And we have seen this, as you mentioned, Blair, time and time again. And the question, many parents have sent emails to our station. When is this going to end? This is a political conversation that's leading into the November election. A lot of local legislators have already given comments, including Senator Raphael Warnock. And so we will make sure those are posted on our website at atlantanewsfirst.com. But our Chelsea Bindfor, she is out on location. And Chelsea, you've been asking questions about the injuries, about the students. What have you learned so far?
Yeah, we're on Tom Miller Road. This is about a half a mile from the school. This is where we have been today as parents have been picking up their children and bringing them down this street to get back up to where they parked about a mile away. We did speak with a mother and daughter. The daughter was a 15-year-old sophomore here at Appalachia High School. She says when those shots rang out and that lockdown went into place, she immediately texted her mom. She said, "I love you. There's a lockdown. There might be a shooting going on." She said her mom replied right away and said, "I'm coming from work to get you." And then that student told us that she passed her cell phone around to other students in her class so they could also text their parents and let them know that they were okay. So eventually she described that police came and they were escorted outside safely to the football field. We know then her mom got to be reunited with her about 2 hours later. They described that very emotional reunion. We have an interview from them that'll be coming up a little bit later. But again, this is a road just past the school where people have been getting back to their cars this afternoon. We have seen a little bit more traffic coming down the street here. It was closed for most of the day, but it looks like police have reopened it down there for flow of traffic, guys.
Just to recap of what we have learned so far, we know here at Appalachia High School there has been a shooting. 4 students, four people. They have not identified yet who has been killed, nor the individuals who have been hurt. We know that at least 9 people are hurt. There is going to be a press conference. Our CNN is reporting, that is one of our affiliate stations. CNN is reporting that there was a phone call that was made to Appalachia High School this morning, warning that 5 schools were being targeted for gunfire and that Appalachia High School would be the first. There's a lot of questions to still unfold, and that will be questions we'll be asking at this press conference.
Now, our understanding of the timeline looking back on this is that this all started around 9:30 this morning here at this school, and ever since then, parents have been showing up here trying to be reunited with some of their children, some of the students here at this school. And you may not be able to see here behind us, but there's a football stadium off in the distance. That's where they took many of the students, as we saw from First Alert Chopper that was over the scene there, and that's where many of the students were held, and so they could be reunited with their parents, which has been such a process, as you can imagine. You have the high school out here, but you also have a preschool right across the street, you have a middle school right nearby, and so you can imagine the crush of people that show up here when something like this happens. They just want to make sure their children are okay and alive.
And I know our Madeline Montgomery is also on location. And Madeline, I don't know if you can show the perspective, but it is an absolute traffic jam. On our way to getting here, I know you're in Gwinnett County, but on our way to approaching Winder, which is about 60 miles northeast of Atlanta, it is it's clogged up. Parents are rushing to pick up their children. The lockdown was released within the last hour and a half. And so, Madeline, tell us, what are you seeing in Gwinnett County?
Sean, I'm actually over here in Barrow County. I'm over here at the hospital at Northeast Georgia Medical Center here in Barrow County, and what I've seen is a different kind of traffic jam because this is the spot, I'm being told by the public relations specialist here with the hospital, that there are several of the victims of the shooting here at this hospital, and we've seen a number of people who look high school aged going into this facility. I spoke with a man who works at the supermercado across the street who says he's never seen so many people at this hospital before, so many police at this hospital before, and according to the public relations expert here, she says that there are 6 total victims here at this location that they have with Northeast Georgia Medical Center. She says 2 of the victims at this location are gunshot victims, and she says that their Brazelton location has 1 victim that is not a gunshot victim, and at their level 1 trauma center in Gainesville they have 1 gunshot victim, and she says that all of the gunshot victims that their facilities have do not have life-threatening injuries, so that's good news. Though they were shot, they are believed to be able to survive those injuries. And then she says that all of the other victims they have that are not gunshot injuries but are inside of their facility, so inside of the Northeast Georgia Medical Center facilities, are people who are suffering from panic attacks or anxiety symptoms. So that's what brought them to the hospital. And so again, we're here at the Barrow County location, and we've seen an influx of people just coming into here, going into the emergency room. We've seen police cars outside of there. We've seen people that look about teenage who are going in and out, and just a number of families going inside and confirming with the folks who work at businesses in this area that it's just a lot more people than they're used to seeing out here at this time. For now, reporting live out here in Winder, I'm Madeline Montgomery, Atlanta News First.
Madeline, thank you for the update there. And it brings up a good point, because we talk about the injuries from this shooting that took place here today, but as some have been pointing out, their injuries may not be from the shooting. You don't know what was happening in some of these classrooms or in the hallways as students were rushing to get out. You know, some students said they were running and they saw the students running, and so it'll be interesting to see, you know, what was happening and all the chaos that was happening inside the school at the time of all this.
Well, again, Georgia is now thrust back into the national spotlight, not for a reason that we're proud of. This school shooting is capturing the attention of many political candidates. I know Doug Reardon is outside of the state's capital, and Doug, you've been talking to local leaders. Also, former President Donald Trump also chiming in on the tragedy that has happened here in Winder.
Yes, just in the last couple of minutes, he took to Truth Social and posted a very brief statement on this, saying that his heart is with those who were affected, and also going on to say that these children were taken far too soon by what he called a sick and deranged monster. We also heard earlier in the day from President Joe Biden. He released a statement calling this horrific and senseless. And all throughout the day from Washington, we have been hearing from people who are telling us their hearts are filled with sorrow for these families here in Winder, Georgia. We know that Attorney General Merrick Garland took a moment during a press conference that was supposed to be about Russian interference in the upcoming election to say exactly that he was thinking about these families. We know that there were also a number of federal agencies that were on scene, including the FBI out there in Barrow County today, and all the way up to our state leaders. We have been hearing reaction from this. In fact, House Speaker John Burns, a Republican, just came out with a statement of his own saying that he is a father and a grandfather, and he cannot imagine what it's like for these families to go through this. He also noted that Georgia has tried to make some investments in recent years and months even in mental health, which they passed quite a bit of mental health legislation this past year, as well as school safety. We noted in our last hour that not too long ago, within the last 12 months, Governor Brian Kemp had allocated $45,000 each for state schools to go ahead and use that to implement safety upgrades. We don't know, even after talking to U.S. Representative Mike Collins, who represents the district that Appalachia is in, if the high school had used any of that money since those allocations were made to make any safety upgrades. I think it's just a little too soon for a lot of people to start even talking about some of the policy around this and how it could become an issue in the November election, which we are now just about 62 days away from. I think right now the focus from everyone that we have been hearing from, whether it's at the federal level, at the state level, or even at the local level, is that they just want to focus on the families right now before they start talking about any preventative measures, legislation that could come out of this. Right now they are just thinking about these families and, of course, the students and staff that were face down with every student and staff's worst nightmare in that school shooting that happened earlier today. And so we are going to continue talking to lawmakers. We're going to be airing more of their tweets and their comments, and even some interviews with folks that we've talked to today about how this is going to impact Georgians, not just in Barrow County, but of course all across our state of Georgia, as they look to try and find ways to prevent this from happening. Because as one lawmaker told us, it is always different. You always look at this with different eyes when it's happening in your backyard. So we'll see you throughout the rest of our coverage this afternoon, but for now, we'll send it back to you in the studio.
And Doug, you know, it's interesting you brought up the point. Doug, it's interesting that you brought up the point, how do we prevent this from happening again? We have spoken to eyewitnesses who were inside Appalachia High School when the shooting took place, in the classroom directly next to the shooting. And we were told that some of the procedures that the teachers went through were drills that they had done before this incident even happened. And that we heard was that the doors automatically locked. The teachers quickly went into action, turned off the lights, and huddled students away from the gunfire into a corner. But the question now, is that enough?
We spoke with a 10th grader who told us at first they thought it was some books that had fallen down. And she said as it went on, they realized it was gunfire. They all huddled in the classroom. People started pulling out their phones. She texted her mother saying, I text her saying, I don't know if I'm going to see you again, but that I love you. And when you hear students describe has been their reality today, it's truly so imaginable what they've been through and what this community is now going through. We were talking about the news conference that was set to begin at 4 o'clock to get an update from law enforcement. That has now been pushed back to 4:30.
Let's go to Adam Murphy. Adam, you're outside of that press conference and waiting for it to start. And there's a lot of unanswered questions, primarily who were the 4 victims that lost their lives today and the injured. More details about them. There's so much to learn.
So much to learn. We hope to gather a little bit of new information for you in the next 15 minutes. The GBI pushing out an alert telling us that that news briefing has now been scheduled for 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are ready for that. We hope to learn new information, as you mentioned, about those who lost their lives, those that were injured, and also the shooter. Now, at this point in time, I can tell you, I spoke with many students and their parents. They talked about the terrifying moments in the classroom while they were in school and they heard gunfire in the hallways. Many of the students were immediately rushed or evacuated out of the building back to the stadium, and they said that they were told to get out so quickly that a lot of them left their phones behind and had no way to communicate with their parents to let them know that they were okay. But I do want to share one piece of video with you. After speaking with a student that heard the gunfire, we have permission from her mother to show this video. She got out her cell phone and shot some footage as law enforcement officers rushed into the classroom. They were wearing tactical gear. They were armed. They came in to make sure that all the students were accounted for. Also, you will probably see with this footage, they go out into the hallway as they're escorting some of these students out and trying to evacuate them out of the building. There were several law enforcement officers armed in the hallway as well. It was very chaotic and very terrifying. One can only imagine, what this might do to a child to witness and experience something so traumatic. But we hope to gain some new information about what led to all of this. I've reported now several times, based on some students' testimony to me, is that there were no metal detectors. So that's something I'm sure that might come up. We also want to know about the school resource officers. Were they on duty? Were they here at the school at the time of this? What was their response? Did they see this happening? So a lot of questions still remain, but a very difficult day for so many in this community, and any parent for that matter, that has to hear about something like this happen, especially when it happens in their school to their child. We will have new information for you hopefully here within the next 15 to 20 minutes, guys.
And Adam, before we let you go, I just want to ask you this question. CNN is reporting this now, and it is drawing a lot of ire from parents in this community. And according to law enforcement, there was a phone call that was made to Appalachia High School early this morning, alerting the school staff that there would be 5 school shootings and Appalachia High School would be one of the first. There's still no determination who made that phone call, who accepted the phone call, and if the school took any proactive steps. I know that you'll be asking those questions too.
Well, certainly, and if that really happened, then one would think immediately you would place all of the schools that were mentioned on lockdown until that could be vetted and cleared. We don't know if that happened here. We know just after 9:30, that's when reports came in to law enforcement about an active shooter in the school here at Appalachia High School in Barrow County. We don't know, though, exactly when that lockdown was activated. Was it activated immediately after receiving that call, or was it activated once the shooter had access to the building? That's a very important question. We need to know that timeline as well. To that point, I will say I spoke with a parent of a child that attended the elementary school, which is nearby. He was in the area because they were on lockdown as well when all of this took place, and he was waiting to reunite with his child, and he mentioned the same thing. He mentioned that he had heard reports that there might be shootings involving multiple schools in the area. So that is certainly something that will be brought up during this news briefing, and we hope to get some new information and some answers for you as soon as authorities address the podium.
Adam Murphy with us live here in Winder. in Barrow County. Thank you so much, Adam, and we'll come back to you as that news conference gets started. But where we are outside the high school, it is still very much an active scene. You see the police tape about 30 yards from where we're standing, a number of law enforcement agencies. All the students' vehicles are still in these parking lots as investigators now look and comb the scene.
We also have a lot of choppers above, including our own. Let's take the vantage point of the First Alert chopper that is honing in on some images in the parking lot. I want to preface this. We don't know what type of white vans these are. Typically, when we see a crime scene and we see white vans, it sometimes is the medical examiner's office. We are trying to determine what those vans are. Why are they here? Is it just law enforcement collecting evidence? This is a massive crime scene with a lot of evidence that has to be collected. And it's just gut-wrenching because there's so many unknowns, and you know your mind can take you to places that you don't need it to go right now. We are out here, we're asking questions, waiting for this press conference to give you brand new information.
And it could stay a crime scene for a while. I remember being in Uvalde, Texas. It was closed off to the public a very long time. So investigators could go in there and go from classroom to classroom. We don't know the layout. We don't know what kind of crime scene we're looking at. This is a big school. About 1,900 kids go here. So this is a big school. Even though we're in one of our smaller counties, it is still a big school with a lot of kids who are going here.
And we're asking questions also from school administrators in the district because of the fact that this is a crime scene and we don't know when students will be allowed to return to campus. Where will they go to school? I mean, unfortunately, when incidents happen like this, the education has to continue. Where will they go? Will neighboring schools allow the students to come and attend school with them? Will they go to what we saw during COVID, at-home learning? Those questions we hope to get answered tonight before families try to determine what they're going to do. They have jobs. They have to go to work. What do we do with our kids tomorrow? Those answers we don't have yet, but we are certainly asking them.
Sean, the reality is that this community is suffering in a major way because there are a number of loved ones who will not be coming home tonight to their families. And you think back to the start of this day, it is a beautiful day here in the Atlanta area, a nice breeze. It couldn't be more picturesque and more of a beautiful day here in our city and in our community. And to know that it's been tarnished by what we know right now and the information that is still yet to come that could break all of our hearts.
And what we do know so far, if you're just joining our coverage, is that 4 people have been shot dead at Appalachia High School. We are awaiting a press conference to find out exactly who those individuals are. We also know that 9 people are injured in local hospitals. I know Savannah Louie, you were at the breaking news desk. You've just learned brand new information. What have you learned?
Well, we are now hearing from leaders across the country, including Vice President Kamala Harris. She spoke at a campaign event earlier today in New Hampshire, where she called for an end to the epidemic of gun violence. Take a listen.
But this is just a senseless tragedy on top of so many senseless tragedies. And it's just outrageous that every day in our country, in the United States of America, that parents have to send their children to school worried about whether or not their child will come home alive. It's senseless. It is. We've got to stop it. And we have to end this epidemic of gun violence in our country once and for all.
And Harris ended by saying, quote, "It doesn't have to be this way, guys."
Savannah, thanks so much. And the word senseless comes to mind for so many people when they talk about this. And this community, we were talking earlier how it will be some time till this community can get past this. Right now, they're still very much trying to digest it. As you and I both arrived here, you couldn't help but see parents and students
and they're still walking.
Yeah, walk right off camera there. And you see them, and I can't imagine what's going through their minds. And I know we both have kids, and when you think about something like this, we all worry about getting that call.
Well, we spoke with an eyewitness earlier today, a 10th grader, and I almost broke down. It's so hard when you hear these stories and you see that there are so many school districts that are trying to make children focus on their classroom studies, and they're taking away their cell phones. But what we heard today was the cell phone was a lifeline for a 10th grader who texted her mother and said, "I don't know if I'm going to make it out here alive. I am scared, but I want you to know that I love you. She made it out okay. But there are other students, there's other people that we don't know if they did. We do know that 4 people have died. The community has rallied around the community of Appalachia High School, and also this is impacting not just the high school, but the middle school, the elementary school, and Winder Methodist Church is going to hold a prayer vigil and just a gathering for families to come together, vet this out. Express your emotions, because this is a senseless tragedy.
Sure, and you have to think, how do parents here in this community talk with their kids about what's happened here at the neighboring middle school, even the preschool across the street? But how do parents talk to their kids across this country about what has happened, and then send, so many schools just getting started here in Atlanta. We've been in school for about 3 or 4 weeks now, but how do you have that conversation with their kids and send them off to school tomorrow and say, have a great day, we know you're going to be okay?
The first thing I did when I even heard that this had happened, I texted my husband, because we can't text our daughter because she's at a school that doesn't allow them to have cell phones. But immediately I said, somehow, some way, check, make sure everything is okay. And our school wasn't even impacted by this. But this has a trickle-down effect, because the question that every parent is going to be asking tonight is my child safe in school?
Sure. I didn't even know. Walking out the door, my 3 boys were there, and they said, why are you leaving work early today? I said, there's been an incident at the school. And how do you explain that to young kids who will pick up this information? They will hear about it from their friends. And how do you have that conversation? It is a national conversation. The conversation today here, unfortunately, in Barrow County, as a wait for answers. We're expecting law enforcement to come to the microphones here. Maybe in 5 minutes, the update we were getting is at 4:30. But the latest information we are getting is that, and this was as of a couple hours ago, 4 people killed, 9 others ending up in the hospital. The suspect is in custody. The suspect is alive. There were some inaccurate reports earlier. The suspect may not have been alive, but the latest information we are getting is that the suspect is in custody. As to who that is, we hope to get that here in this 4:30 news conference.
And hopefully we can take the vantage point from the first alert chopper above the scene here at Appalachia High School. There are multiple big, huge white vans that are in the parking lot of Appalachia High School. We have not been able to determine what those vans are doing, but we are making the assumption that they are collecting evidence. There are long lines still. This is now 4:26 in the afternoon. School had been let out almost an hour ago. The lockdown was lifted, and there are still mounds and mounds of cars lined up. There are still parents that are pulling up to the elementary school, the middle school, the high school to reunite with their student.
And parents were having a tough time getting this close. The closer you got to the school, as you can imagine, the roads were closed off. Law enforcement were closing off those roads. And so what you had is parents, community members, parking on the sides of roads, making it the roads so tight and narrow to get through because they were ditching their cars and getting out, coming to the school, walking in, no matter how long it took. They just wanted to make sure the kids are okay and that they're safe.
And again, I just want to reiterate that if you are in Barrow County, if you are in the Winder community, Winder Methodist Church is holding a prayer vigil.
Yeah, they've opened up their church all day long and into the evening, knowing this community is hurting. And the Winder United Methodist Church will be there for people who want to come there and pray tonight and just be together.
We are awaiting a press conference that is scheduled to start in less than 3 minutes. Our Adam Murphy is in the position where the press conference will be held by law enforcement. We are expecting to hear details more about the 4 victims who lost their lives today. We're also expecting to hear about the 9 who are injured.
If you saw the news conference earlier around 2 or 2:30, they were giving basic information. I think at that point they were still trying to gather the information and also trying to notify families of those who may have lost ones. They want the families to hear it first rather than explaining to the media.
Well, let's go. We have a reporter on location. I believe that this is Chelsea Beinfor. Chelsea, tell us where you are and what have you learned so far?
Well, we're still on Tom Miller Road. This is about a mile from the school. This is where we've been positioned today. And this is where a lot of parents were being asked to park their cars and then walk about a mile to the high school back here behind us. So traffic is moving freely on this road once again. So it has been reopened up to cars. But I want to take you to some video of those parents that we talked to as they were literally running, walking as fast as they could this mile to the high school. We spoke with parents parents and grandparents. Some knew that their children were okay. They had been texting with them. They were saying, we're out on the football field, please come pick us up. But we also spoke to parents who had not been able to get in touch with their son or their daughter. A high school student, Melanie Alvarez, says she texted her mom as soon as the lockdown started and said, I love you. I hope I see you again. Her mom tells us that she raced to the school and was eventually reunited with Melanie out on the football field. We spoke with both of them as they were leaving the high school today.
I was scared. I was like, oh my God, like, are we seriously going through a lockdown? I started crying. I was like, I just want to get out of here. I just want to see my parents. Like, I don't want to be here no more. I just broke down crying completely.
And all of a sudden I hear her voice up from the bleachers, and I just started crying and, you know, thanking God in my head. Thank you, God, for allowing me to see my daughter again.
A lot of parents thankful to be reunited with their children. We know, unfortunately, that will not be the case for some families of those victims, but also those survivors. They witnessed horrible trauma today. So now families, they're talking about, you know, how this is going to impact their children for the rest of their lives. Guys, back to you.
Chelsea, thank you. You're mentioning that you spoke to eyewitness. We spoke to some here as well. A 10th grader who was in the classroom directly where the shooting happened. She reported hearing, she said, a series of gunshots. It was not just one or two. Yeah, that's how she described it. It was multiple gunshots and several successions of rounds of fire. When she came out of the classroom, when everything had settled, she said that she saw a lot of injuries. We know that the press conference, Blair, it is about to start here shortly. Law enforcement is now starting to approach the podium. There are going to be a lot of questions, particularly the one of a lot of concern for us in our newsroom is, was there a phone call made to Appalachia High School before school started, warning district administrators and the school personnel that there would be a school shooting at 5 different schools and that Appalachia would be the first?
Law enforcement gave an update a little earlier. We're expecting a lot more details on what they know, the latest information, but what we were hearing is that 4 people shot and killed here at Appalachia High School. And we look over our shoulder, you can see this large law enforcement presence that is on its way. It is a slow walk, a very deliberate walk from Appalachia High School, where there has been this tragedy, to these cameras, where they will be offering some new insight into what they've learned here. And you can only imagine what's the tales from inside that store.
I am just watching the body language, yeah. Blair. Just the body language alone is giving me a sense that the tone is going to, number one, be somber. We do know that there were 4 people killed. The question is, will they have the next of kin been notified, and will they share that information? But it's a very deliberate walk. The faces are somber. They're actually looking down at the ground while they're walking. I anticipate that this press conference, it may be gut-wrenching. Law enforcement, they've seen what they've seen inside of the school. We don't know what type of weapon was used, at what point, how close was the student when they shot the victims? Was it at point range? This crime scene is massive, and what they have seen is probably unthinkable. But as they approach the podium, we're preparing to hear their statement.
We know local law enforcement is here. We know the FBI is here. GBI is here as this news conference is about to get underway. And as they start to take the podium and give us an update, let's go ahead and take it live now as this is about to begin.
Director of the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, and we wanted to come back this afternoon and present you with a little more of a timeline of the events that have taken place here today and what we know up to this point with the investigation. At approximately 10:20 a.m. this morning, the Barrow County Sheriff's Office received alerts about reports of an active shooter and radio traffic from school resource officers concerning the same concern, or having the same concern. Within minutes, law enforcement was on scene, as well as 2 school resource officers assigned here to the school, who immediately encountered the subject within just minutes of this report going out. Once they encountered the subject immediately surrendered to these officers, and he was taken into custody. Additionally, what I want you to know as of now, there are 4 individuals who are deceased from this incident, 9 that have been taken to local hospitals with various injuries. Of those that are deceased, 2 were students and 2 were teachers here at the school. The priority right now for us within this investigation is to gather all the facts, to make sure that we're accurate with it, because this is a murder investigation. As the sheriff mentioned earlier this morning, the shooter is in custody. His name is COLT, that's C-O-L-T, Gray. He is a 14-year-old student here at the school, G-R-A-Y. He is a 14-year-old student here at the high school. Again, he has been taken into custody. He will be charged with murder, and he will be tried as an adult and handled as an adult. We're coordinating these charges and obviously this investigation with District Attorney Brad Smith, who is the District Attorney for the Piedmont Judicial Circuit here. Since earlier this morning we talked with you, and since the incident occurred, numerous interviews have been taking place through our investigation with students, faculty, as well as any other witnesses that we could identify. Law enforcement had a very, very swift response to this incident once the incident was determined that there was a concern here. Those resources, whether it was in that response or throughout this investigation to assist, came obviously from the sheriff's office here, from other local law enforcement agencies, state law enforcement agencies, and federal law enforcement agencies as well. To include, not to be left out, multiple EMS personnel, multiple fire personnel, and agencies. Those agencies responded here as well today, and I am extremely grateful, as I know the sheriff is, for that quick response and the partnerships of working here together with what all has gone on. Currently, from the investigative perspective, we have crime scene agents and other special agents from the GBI, from close to a dozen of our different work units from across the state that have responded here today to work on this investigation, again, collecting evidence, conducting interviews, and so forth. I do want to pass this along, that if anyone has any information that wants to be passed on concerning this investigation, that they can do that anonymously at our tip line at 1-800-597-TIPS or 1-800-597-8477. They can also report this on by downloading the See Something, Send Something app. That can be done by Android or Apple phones, either one. If they need to report any tips concerning this investigation. Let me close out before I turn this over to the sheriff, and let you just remind you that this is still a very active investigation. There is still a lot that is very fluid. There's still a lot of interviews to be conducted that will continue on into the night, as well as crime scene work and collecting and gathering evidence. But what is more important for me to mention here to you is my heartfelt sympathy to the parents, the students that were here today. Regardless of where they were in the school, this has got a great impact on them as well as on this community. My thoughts and prayers, along with everybody standing behind me and every law enforcement agency in this state, and many I will tell you around this country, they are in our thoughts and prayers, and we will continue with that. We ask for your patience as we continue through this, and we'll continue to try to give you as many updates with information as we can to keep you informed. But thank you for being here. I'm now going to turn it over to Bexar County Sheriff Judge Smith. Thank you.
Director, would you spell your name, please?
H-O-S-E-Y.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Sheriff Judge Smith of the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. I never imagined that I would be speaking to the media in my career over something that happened today, the pure evil that happened today. I cannot thank the people behind me for the support they give me today, to give this office and give this staff. This hits home for me. I was born and raised here. I went to school in this school system. My kids go to this school system. I'm proud of this school system. My heart hurts for these kids. My heart hurts for our community. But I want to make it very clear that hate will not prevail in this county. I want that to be very clear and known. Love will prevail over what happened today. I assure you of that. It is very early as to what happened. Governor Kemp reached out to me and has provided me every single resource that he has to make sure justice prevails. I don't know why it happened. I may not ever know. We may not ever know. But I ask that you and our community lift up our schools, lift up our public safety, and that, again, we do not let this hateful event prevail as to what happened today. I want to thank the surrounding agencies and counties and cities and state and federal authorities that have come and provided us, because they prevented a lot of more tragic events from happening. Continue to lift up these families, continue to lift up our students and our kids, and know that love will prevail. At this time, I'm going to ask Dr. LaDuff, our school superintendent, to come and speak on behalf of the school.
Good afternoon. I'm Dallas LaDuff. I'm the superintendent of Bexar County School System. I want to thank the Bexar County Sheriff's Office and all of our law enforcement partners for their swift response today, along with that of our staff. I'd also like to thank our community for their response and patience as we work to reunify the students with their families here today and secure the rest of our school campuses. Our schools will be closed for the remainder of this week as we cooperate fully with law enforcement to get answers to the many questions that we all have about this incident here today. But as we are closed, our central offices will remain open, where we will have grief counseling available for our community every day this week and thereafter as we support each other through this terrible event. In closing, I just want to say to our community, as a school system, we are here for you, we support you, and we are ready to get you any support that you may need as we grieve through this together. Thank you.
Sheriff, if you're saying hate will not prevail in this community, are you investigating this as some sort of hate crime?
Well, shortly, if someone decides to take a firearm into a school where kids are given an education or entitled to an education and want to harm others, to me it's hateful.
Sheriff, can you talk about the initial interaction between whoever was able to stop the shooter? Can you describe that to us? How did it go down? What exactly happened for us?
Obviously, the shooter was armed, and our school resource officer engaged him. And the shooter quickly realized that if he did not give up, that it would end with an OIS, or an officer-involved shooting. He gave up, got on the ground, and the deputy took him into custody.
Sheriff, any idea how the weapon got inside the school, and was there any warning that this was going to happen?
Not that I'm aware of. Again, very early, and we're still looking into that, whether or not, or how he obtained it and how he got it into school.
Sure. Have you been in touch at all with his parents or his family to learn more about what led up to these moments?
We have.
Any information you can share?
No.
What kind of weapon was
it? It seems like you have a large Hispanic population. Have you been able to communicate with the people in their language to make sure that everybody knows what's happening?
Yes, sir, I have. The school and our office has people that speak in Spanish, and they have spoke to those folks as well. Yes.
Sheriff, is the shooter speaking with the law enforcement now?
Sorry.
Is the shooter talking, and is he saying why?
The shooter was interviewed, and he was speaking with our investigators earlier, along with the GBI.
How is that video surveillance? How is that helping the sheriff?
It is helping our investigation.
Sheriff, is this
reports of threatening calls perhaps made to the school prior to the shooting? Is that accurate?
None that I'm aware of.
Were all 9 injured victims shot?
In some capacity, yes.
Sheriff, can you tell us about the 2 individuals deceased and was one targeted?
We don't know of any targets at this point.
Sheriff, what kind of weapon was used? Have you identified the weapon?
We have not identified that at this point, no.
Sheriff, is there a connection?
This is the last question I'm going to take.
Sheriff, is there a connection between the shooter and the victims?
None that I'm aware of.
Was this a student here at the school?
I know that you have a lot of questions about the student and that we mentioned that we identified earlier. Keep in mind that that's part of our investigation, that we're looking into every aspect of that individual, his connection here at the school. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, he was a student here. So as part of our investigation, we're looking into all aspects, current and prior, involving that individual.
Can you tell us how many rounds were fired? He is a student. Can you tell us how many rounds were fired?
Do what?
The shooter is a student, yes.
When can we expect the
We do not know how many rounds.
Director, has that shooter had any past history with law enforcement?
For now, this is the information that we have. It is an active investigation. I assure you we do plan to come back out here in a couple of hours. Please make sure you're following the GBIX page. That's where we're going to be putting the updates. If there's anything that's new, we'll make sure that we share that information. It's still very early. Investigators have a lot of work to do. We appreciate your patience. Do expect another in-person news conference out here next few hours. Monitor the X page, and we will be sure to update you accordingly. Thank you.
And that's the on x.com?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Also sharing in that grief as we got an update from law enforcement as they now walk off from the podium. And the latest information, a lot of new information came out of that, Sean, identifying the shooter as a 14-year-old student, which many people will struggle to believe in all that. We know that 4 people are dead. 2 of them were students. 2 of them were teachers killed. This is a murder investigation. We know that suspect will be tried as an adult. There was a lot that came up several times about the response by law enforcement, how quick the response is, and that goes back to the shooting in Uvalde because there was so much criticism against law enforcement there in Texas and how.
In fact, some people lost their jobs because of the response. But we're hearing from both GBI, from the school superintendent, also from the sheriff here in Barrow County, that there was according to them, the response time was quick. And that, in fact, the 14-year-old suspect who was a student at Appalachia High School, there were 2 resource officers who were armed who confronted the 14-year-old student. And according to the sheriff, the student knew that it was not going to end positively for that student if he did not surrender. They said he surrendered peacefully. He was then confiscated and then taken into police custody. We've learned that that student is 14-year-old COLT Gray. He was a student here at Appalachia High School. Again, 2 students are among the fatalities, as well as 2 teachers that are dead. We're not giving the names. They also said that the injuries to those 9 individuals who were hurt in this incident suffered some type of gunshot wound.
We also heard that the suspect, obviously in custody now, but is helping with the investigation and is talking with investigators, which is a key component to figure out why all this took place today as they sort this through and they investigate not only what happened inside there, but what he's saying about what happened that day.
So a lot of people are probably wondering if you have children at Appalachia High School. We have learned from the school superintendent that classes will be dismissed all this week. There will be no school whatsoever, but they are going to have their resource office open where they will have grief counselors on staff for anyone, whether you're a student in the school district or you live in the community or you're in the surrounding community and you need someone to talk to help you process the grief, to discuss how you can help talk to your children about it will be safe to go back to school again. They are making those resources available.
The grief not only for the students, but as you point out, for members of the community, and we heard the sheriff there get emotional, understandably, saying how much this hits close to home in his own community, saying he never thought he'd be here doing this, talking about what happened in this community here today.
We told you that there are 9 individuals that are recovering from some type of injury related to the shooting here at Appalachia High School. Let's go to Madeline Montgomery. Madeline, you're outside of the hospital where some of the injured have been taken.
That's correct. We have a breakdown actually of how many people are within the Northeast Georgia health system right now. And we know that it's actually 6 people in total who are here inside of this facility. And it is 2 here who are gunshot victims here. And the other folks who are here are suffering even from panic attacks or from anxiety issues. And then there's also 1 victim, not a gunshot victim, but a victim of a panic attack at their Brazelton facility. And we also know that there is a gunshot victim at the Level 1 Trauma Center that the Northeast Georgia Medical Center has in Gainesville. And we're told that all of these gunshot victims are going to be okay. They have non-life-threatening injuries. And we know that there's also a patient confirmed by Children's Healthcare of Atlanta at their Eggleston location. And we have it confirmed by Grady that they also have a patient over there. And we do not know the statuses of those patients. And we also don't know the breakdown of those patients, whether they were students or whether they were faculty. But we did just learn in that news conference that it was 2 students and 2 faculty members who were shot and killed at Appalachia High School. For now, reporting live out here in Winder, Madeline Montgomery, Atlanta News First.
Thank you, Madeline. And that we've also heard from Governor Brian Kemp. He is very closely watching the situation that's developing here at Appalachia High School. He has reached out to the sheriff himself and told the sheriff that I am going to extend every resource that the state of Georgia has to make sure that justice is brought and due diligence on this investigation happens here in Winder.
It is still very much an active investigation, as they said, here behind us, and it may be some time till these students' cars can leave this parking lot. And you see the fire trucks behind us, law enforcement, EMS out there. It is going to be some time that they're out here investigating. We just heard that news conference update from law enforcement. Let's bring in our Adam Murphy, who was also, you were there, Adam, and I'm curious what stood out to you as we got that update.
Well, Blair, let me say this. I know we wanted to know the answer as to whether or not the school district received some sort of call first thing this morning alerting them that there would be a series of school shootings, and the first would be here at Appalachia High School in Barrow County. And the sheriff, Sheriff Judd Smith, answered that question saying he was unaware of any call or alert that was made to the school district, to the school itself or the school system, warning them of a potential school shooting. So he squashed that particular information, saying that they are not aware of any sort of call or alert made prior to this incident occurring. He did say the shooter walked in the building. He was armed. They did talk about another thing that I had brought up. One of the questions we wanted answers to was, were the 2 assigned resource officers here? Were they at the school at the time this happened? And did they act on the active shooter that arrived in the building? And the answer was yes. You heard the sheriff talk about the fact that one of those school resource officers encountered the shooter almost immediately upon coming into the school and was able to stop the shooter from firing off more shots, basically saying it's not going to end well for him if he continued. He negotiated with this gunman and then took him into custody, and that clearly must have saved many more lives based on what was going on in such a short period of time. Now, I also made some other notes here. I want to refer to the notes that I have. The sheriff talked about hate. He said hate will not be tolerated in Barrow County or in any of the schools or school system itself in this county, and love and justice will prevail. He said this is personal to him because he went through this school system. He has children in the school system as well, and his heart hurts for the students and the community. Now he says, Sheriff Judd Smith went on to say he doesn't know why it happened, and we may never know why it happened. We hope their investigation will lead to some answers, and knowing that the gunman is in custody and alive, we may get eventually, not right away, but we may get some detailed information as to a motive and what led to all of this. Now, the sheriff said there was no indication that the gunman was targeting anybody in particular. And we do know 2 staff members and 2 students died after the gunman opened fire. School being closed for the rest of the week. Grief counselors are being offered up at the district offices as well. And, you know, one of the quotes I have here from Sheriff Smith, he says, I never imagined that I would be speaking about pure evil. He talked about, you know, this is where he grew up and this is his hometown, and He never imagined that he'd walk before a set of dozens of news cameras and speak to the public, speak to the media and everyone else about pure evil. So a very tragic day for many people in this community. We hope to continue to get new information because we are being told by the GBI that they will provide another update within a couple of hours, guys.
Thank you so much.
And Adam, we've also learned that school, as you mentioned, will be closed for the rest and the remainder of the week because this is now an active murder scene, according to the sheriff of Barrow County. And we've learned just the community reminder how it is coming together to help those who are trying to just process this unmeasurable loss that they are having right now. The United Methodist Church here in Winder is going to hold a prayer vigil and also opening up the church doors for those to come in and just to help process their grief.
Yeah, the school also offering the grief counselors for those who need it throughout this week. And keep in mind, school just started here 3 to 4 weeks ago. And, you know, tonight as people start to digest this across the country, but you have to think about the families here in Barrow County that are trying to understand this, knowing that 2 students and 2 teachers will not be coming home to their loved ones tonight because of the tragedy here today.
And it was an act that was, according to the sheriff and GBI, saying that the shooter was a 14-year-old student here at Appalachia High School. So this is someone that many of these students and the faculty knew, and that is even harder to